Hello, Mother Horror and Nightworms people. I'm Andersen Prunty. I'll be reading my story called Candy Heart in my collection, Creep House. Hope you enjoy it. In the middle of the woods, Diane Celine whirled around, her pulse quickening. Sudden movement snapped twigs around her. Her eyes stabbed the moonlit darkness, trying to find the source of the noise. Madness gnawed at her, the culmination of weeks of worry. If she stopped to think about it, if she stopped to think why she was standing out here in the cold, purplish darkness, beneath the bare trees and the fat moon, she could almost see the lunacy of her situation. Almost, but not quite. Maybe another month or two of fruitless searching and she would be there, ready to bow to sanity and run the opposite way, but not yet. Joey was gone. Her madness wouldn't bring him back. She didn't know who would take a 6-year-old boy, but she had seen the news enough to know it happened all the time. Yes, those things happened all the time, only the television glass always added just enough of a layer of fiction to them so her thin wall of safety remained. That wall was gone now. All the faceless psychopaths she had heard about on the television had finally found her. Actually, they had found Joey. And now she was prepared to do anything necessary to bring him back. If something in her gut told her to leave the house and come out here to this clearing in the woods, then that was exactly what she was going to do. If that gut feeling had told her to wake up and drink a pint of motor oil, she would have done that too. She didn't have to explain herself to anybody, and if something happened, if one of those gut instincts panned out and she found Joey, the need for explanations would be erased. Again, there were those scurrying sounds off in the woods, heavy and so quick. Her head whipped to the side, breath spuming out like factory steam. Probably just a deer, she thought. Then a pain ripped up her spine and she dropped to the floor of the woods. The weeks had passed in a darkening whirlwind where some things, mental things, thoughts and memories, were smashed, shattered, or devoured completely. It began with the morning she woke up and found Joey gone. His father had run out on them a long time ago, and now it was just the boy and her, living alone in a ramshackle house between a winter quiet town and hibernating woods. Amazing how she could live alone like that and never have so much as an inkling of fear. Also amazing was how fast that fear could wrap its steel-thick trap jaws around her heart, lungs, and mind. The day was off, not quite right, from the moment she woke up on the couch in the living room. It took her a couple of minutes to put things together. She was confused, unable to recall the last time she had fallen asleep anywhere except her bed. Maybe she had dropped off while watching television. She searched her mind for an explanation. The pills. It had to be the pills. She had changed doctors last week, and the new doctor, she remembered jokingly referring to him as the incredibly hairy Dr. Bath to Joey, had changed her pills. He told her these new ones would still help her sleep at night when the red anxiety crawled all over her skin, but they wouldn't leave her feeling so groggy the next day. She wasn't used to them. That must be why she fell asleep on the couch. But she still couldn't see how that fully explained it. She always doubled up on the old pills during this most special time of the month because they helped with her cramping and bloating as well as her anxiety. Sometimes she thought the pills were like some magical cure-all. Now, if they could just take care of excess weight, depression, and a tight financial situation. Not only had she passed out on the couch, she had also overslept. The angle of the meager February light coming in from the windows told her she should already be at work and Joey should already be at school. With her heart pounding and her head in a foggy spin, she started to run down the hall and wake Joey before something caught her eye. Glass double doors faced the woods, taking up half of one wall in the living room. It provided a good view. It was one of the things that made her decide to rent this place upon walking into it, despite it being a little out of her price range. There was something smeared across the doors, a clear, hardened substance, something that reminded her of snot. She stopped before turning into the dim hallway. A thought popped into her head, reaffirming her assertions that she needed the pills she took. She had to get rid of whatever that was on the doors. She would not be able to think of anything else until it was gone. She would yell at Joey and be tense all day at work if she knew that single streak of yuckiness was still there. Rushing into the bathroom, she grabbed some paper towels and Windex, opened the double doors, and vigorously cleaned the snot-like substance from them. The streak was about 6 inches wide and, at its arc, reached her chest. It made her think of a large, drooly dog. Maybe a coyote, she thought, for she had heard them howling at night. Once the streak was gone, she immediately felt a little more clear-headed, now able to go wake up Joey and get ready for work. She glanced into her bedroom as she passed it and noticed a light flashing from her answering machine. A digital red 2 blinked repeatedly as she approached it. Shit, she thought. The first was probably Joey's school, calling to find out where he was. The school would have probably called her work, also. The other message was probably from work. Way to get everyone all worried, sleepyhead. How was she going to excuse Joey? Give him a note letting the teacher know that his mom was an anxiety-ridden pill popper? She hit the play button and listened to the messages robotically spurt from the machine while she hurried to Joey's room, not knowing why she now felt so sure he wasn't going to be in his bed. Until that point, that pinprick of panic, she had simply thought he would be in there sleeping because she had not woken him. Please let that feeling be wrong. She saw a lump in the covers, and her hopes rose until she reached the bed and punched down on the hollow fabric, feeling nothing, her heart beginning to steadily increase its rate. She could only hope one of the messages was from Joey or somebody who could tell her he was safe and sound. It was perfectly possible he had woken up on his own, gotten dressed, and gone out to wait for the bus, but he just seemed too young for that. Her feelings were right about the messages. One of them from Joey's school, one of them from work. Both of them sounded vaguely concerned, but more concerned with her complete failure to call and report either of these absences than any kind of panicked, genuine concern, like that which now surged through her body. The alarm she felt held court with an overwhelming sense of guilt. The last time she had seen Joey, she had sent him to bed early because he had scattered little candy hearts she had bought for him on Valentine's Day around the house. She had been incredibly mad at him. Even after yelling at him about the mess, he had tried to smuggle some of those hearts into bed with him, the palm of his sweaty little hand multicolored pastel after she pried them from it. She spent the next hour searching the house inside and out, not finding anything. He was gone. How could she have let this happen? Before letting panic punch a devastating hole in her sanity, she tried to seize on the only rational explanation. His father had somehow found a way into the house and lured the boy away. He had been threatening to do that ever since the divorce 3 years ago, and now she figured he probably had. A secret part of her, buried beneath the heat. A secret part of her, buried beneath the hate and resentment, almost wanted this to be the case. At least then she knew he would be safe, or as safe as a child could be in the company of a womanizing alcoholic. Now she figured his father could probably make an actual case for gaining custody of Joey, coming into the house to find her whacked out of her skull on sleeping pills, completely neglecting Joey's education and her means for financial support. What would it matter that he had only before come to see Joey sporadically, at best, or that he had paid her exactly nothing in child support? She wanted to call the bum, but she just couldn't bring herself to do that. He would just lie to her or try to make her feel smaller than she already felt. She did the only thing she could think was left to do. She called the police. Officer Branson was very kind to her. He asked all the right questions. He kept her calm. He asked her about her ex-husband, Stanley. Surprisingly, she was able to answer most of the officer's questions in a reasonably intelligent manner, even though it felt like her brain or her heart were going to swell and pop out of her body. Branson assured her they would contact the police in Stanley's area and have them check out the situation. That afternoon, she called Officer Branson again, wanting to know if they had any leads. Branson told her they had questioned Stanley and were not under the impression he had Joey. Stanley had let them come in and search his house without a warrant. She had already known this. Stanley had called her as soon as the officers left, out of his head with anger and frustration. Of course he blamed her, and she didn't think she had a right to disagree with him. He said he was going to search on his own before hanging up the phone. That evening, the police came to her house, dusting for prints, looking for any evidence of a break-in. Other officers searched the woods, questioning the occupants of the houses located closest to hers. The next day, Diane broadened her own search to the woods. As the investigation progressed, she went back there every day, mentally mapping the dead trees as landmarks so she wouldn't end up searching the same area over and over. Sometime during the second week, she found something that gave her both a sense of dread and a faint glimmer of hope. She almost didn't notice it at first. It could have been any tiny piece of debris. It was the color that caught her eye. Bending to pick it up, she saw that it was a pastel green candy heart. The inscription on the tiny heart said, "Maybe." She knew it was stupid. She knew it meant no more than what the kings of holiday commercialization intended it to mean, but under those circumstances, it seemed to contain some kind of mystical prophecy, like a girl on a first date opening a fortune cookie that says, "You have found the love of your life." Maybe, she thought, maybe he is out here. She continued to search the woods all through the bitter cold days. She didn't know what she was looking for, and she didn't know how she would be able to deal with it if she actually came upon his dead body lying out there somewhere. All of her searching led to nothing. Only more panic, more depression, more guilt, an increased feeling of doom. Down on her knees in the woods, a month later, staring longingly at the pale moon, everything came back to her. The new medicine wasn't working. The old pills had kept this changing away. Images of this night the previous month flashed through her dulling mind, before what was human was completely devoured by what was animal. There was just enough human left to grasp those fleeting animal images and feelings. She had locked herself outside because she felt strange, and she hadn't felt that way since before Joey was born, and she knew what feeling that way meant. She had tried to get into the house, tried so desperately, beating her snout against the door until she finally found one flimsy enough to batter open. Only she hadn't had to batter it open at all. It opened for her, and Joey stood on the other side, looking at her with a combination of awe and fear until he realized what was in front of him. He took off running for his room, screaming. She had dragged him out here. He had yelled for her to stop, and she had tried to communicate to him that his time had come. Oh my God, she thought. Had she murdered her own son? But before she could answer herself, those thoughts were gone, surrendered to the animal thoughts, the ones that could only focus on hunger and scent and desire. Jeff Branson didn't know what the hell he was seeing. He didn't know why this shit always happened to him. He guessed that was what he got for trying to be a responsible officer, a good cop. He wasn't even on duty, but there was something about the Celine woman's case that had really gotten to him. He didn't have any children of his own, but if he did, he would want to know that, should one of them go missing, the law would do everything in its power to bring him back. Jeff had taken a very active interest in her. It probably didn't hurt that he was single and she was single and not at all bad looking. He reassured himself it was more than that. The FBI and the state police, though informed of the disappearance, didn't really seem to be doing a damned thing about it. Diane had called him and told him about the clue, the little candy heart, and that had given him renewed desire to search for the boy. Every chance he got, he had come out here to the woods behind the house. He didn't think it would hurt anything to wander around in the woods with a shotgun. If another clue didn't turn up, then he figured that, at the very least, he might be able to bag a deer. Part of him wanted to tell the woman the boy was gone, that he probably would not be seen again. That was what his gut told him. It seemed like he had been through this too many times before. Not here, of course. Things like this didn't happen in Twin Springs, Ohio. But, fresh out of the academy, he had served on the Orlando force for 3 years. That had been enough for him. He couldn't find any comfortable resolution with the little children like he could manage with teenagers. Teenagers had ways of taking care of themselves. Some of them just ran off. Some of them were mixed up in really weird shit. Children did not just run off. They were usually taken. And the people taking them usually did not have wholesome goals in mind. So tonight he had put on his plain clothes, his heavy winter jacket, grabbed his shotgun from his house, and come out here to wait. Maybe he had heard too many horror stories, but he had visions of some crazy, child abducting family living out here in the woods. They were probably cannibals, to boot. He knew there were a few communes on the surrounding farms. While many people saw this as a nearly utopian attempt at peaceful coexistence, he could only think of the Manson family and cults. And he was hoping to catch one of them passing back and forth here in the deep night hours, thinking they were operating in complete secrecy. Branson was more than a little surprised when he saw Diane stumble into the woods. He was going to approach her until he noticed she acted differently than the woman who had presented herself in front of him before. She seemed not so much hysterical as wild. He decided to watch and see what she was going to do, where she was going to go. Suddenly, she stopped in the clearing and fell to her knees. He would have dismissed what happened next as complete fiction if he wasn't observing it firsthand. The woman grew large. Hair sprouted out all over her body. A werewolf, Branson thought, wanting to dismiss the idea as ludicrous as soon as it popped into his head. But it was hard to dismiss as ludicrous when he could stand there and watch the face reach out into a snout, the teeth elongate and yellow, the ears grow and bend back, the clothes rip and fall away, the legs and arms deform, lowering the woman. He had seen this occur in a number of horror movies and had always wondered why the person just stood around and watched this transformation happen. It never went quickly. Why didn't they just plug them? He figured it was just one of those movie anomalies, something that had to happen and shouldn't be thought about too much. But here he was thinking about it. Hell, here he was doing it. And he had the answer. Because a werewolf is not just a monster. It's almost always a person the watcher knows. And maybe they know that person as a decent person. It wasn't like the movies where the good guy hunts down the serial killer and stands paralyzed while the psycho soliloquizes. Now fully formed, Diane sniffed at the ground, looking hungrily up at the moon. Branson crouched down, but it didn't matter. She had already seen him. The dog-like thing turned its head in his direction and growled, baring those sharp yellow teeth. Now that it was a matter of self-defense, Branson took aim with the rifle and fired as the wolf lunged across the clearing at him. He doubted his bullets were silver and wondered if that even mattered. He pressed the trigger again and again. The first shotgun blast sheared off the wolf's right front paw. The second blast took off a hunk of the snout, collapsing the thing. After the second shot, the gun only clicked as Branson pulled the trigger. Empty. He stayed where he was, just slightly occluded behind the bare shrubs. The body of the wolf slowly turned back into the Celine woman. Branson felt like this would probably spell his end as a police officer. It was frowned upon to kill the people who you were trying to help. He felt certain he would eventually have to draw someone's attention to this naked, shot-up body that happened to belong to a woman he had somewhat openly taken a special interest in. Another sound from the far end of the clearing. What now? Branson thought. Then he saw Joey. At least he thought it had to be Joey. It was a smaller wolf than the one he had just shot, and even though it was completely animal, there was something about it that made Branson think of all those pictures Diane had shown him prior to the search. It was like watching a cartoon where the animated character vaguely resembles the actor doing the voiceover. The wolf strolled out into the clearing, approaching the body on the ground. It licked at the woman, nuzzling its wet nose against her neck, and Branson swore he heard a whimper that sounded very much like a human cry. The wolf looked into the woods where Branson crouched and issued a growl. Then it came at him. He couldn't load his gun fast enough. The wolf threw itself on Branson, its jaws gnashing in front of his face, and Branson smelled, just faintly, the sugary smell of candy hearts. He wanted to laugh with the absurdity of it all, but sharp teeth tore through his jugular, and he was pretty sure he would never laugh again. Thank you very much.